Hey everyone, today is July 27th, and I was here in my garage and, just talking to the Lord about what's been going on in the last few days. And, just praying, and, I just really felt a very positive shift in my spirit, as I was praying that things are going in the right direction. I mean, even though we see all these things are going in the right direction. And as I was praying and, just the Holy Spirit, just allowing the Holy Spirit to minister to me, this is what I heard him tell me. In Proverbs 8:34, it says, "Blessed is the man that hears me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the post of my doors." So there's two things here in this verse in Proverbs 8:34. It says, the man that hears and watches. Hears and watches. And, as he ministered this to me, it came up in John 5:19 and John 5:30. And I'll read John 5:19 here to you. And it says this. Now remember, in that Proverbs 8:34, they were hearing and watching daily. Okay? Now in John 5:19 it said, Jesus answered and said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he seeth the Father do, for what things soever he does, these also does the Son likewise. And then in John 5:30 it says this. It says, Jesus said, I can of myself do nothing. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not my own will, but the will of the Father which has sent me. So here we have two verses in John chapter 5 that talks about hearing and it talks about seeing. Jesus was able to do all the works to heal the sick and so on by hearing and seeing the things that his Father was doing. Let me say that again. Jesus was able to do those great works that he did while he was here on this earth, while he heard from his Father and he would see what his Father was doing. Okay? So back to Proverbs 8:34, it said, Blessed is the man that hears and watches. We're supposed to be able to hear and watch what our Father is saying and what our Father is doing if we want to do the works of Jesus and greater works. See, it says not only will you do these works, but you'll also do greater works. So we've seen the works of Jesus. I've seen the works personally of Jesus in my life. And this is when I was at the state capitol here the other day, and just praying and watching what was going on, and just seeing all the turmoil there on Monday, just watching the turmoil. The only thing that was missing on Monday, it was like a Mount Carmel experience where the prophets of Baal, I believe, challenged Elijah, or Elijah challenged them. The only thing that was missing was the things that they would cut themselves with. That was the only thing that was missing. The prayers did make a difference, because the next day, thousands upon thousands of people that loved life showed up. And this is really spiritual warfare, and Proverbs 8:34 really shows us and gives us a really good glimpse in how to conduct spiritual warfare, and not only how to conduct it, but actually win. Because when we see what the Father is doing, see, we're actually seeking first his kingdom and his righteousness. We're seeking God's will. And it says in Hebrews 4:15 and 16, this is why it's so important. The person that watches at the gate, like it says in Proverbs 8:34, they're not watching for the next football game or for the next show that comes on Netflix. They're watching to see what their Father is doing. In Hebrews 4, starting in verse 14, it says this. It talks about our high priest, and it says this. It says, seeing then that we have a great high priest. We do have a great high priest, and that is passed into the heavens. Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our profession or our confession. For we have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace. Now we're passing through the heavens, coming to this throne of grace, because it says in Ephesians that we're seated with him in heavenly places. And we are waiting to hear and waiting to see what our Father is saying and what he's doing. It says, so that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. This is definitely a time of need, and we have that privilege to come boldly, to go into that and wait daily at the post of his door, to wait daily there, listening and waiting for him to speak and waiting to see what he's going to do. This is the key to spiritual warfare. It's the key to having victory in every area of our life. It's the key of bringing about what God wants done here on this earth. This is so powerful, I believe, that if we just get a hold of this and just meditate on this, Proverbs 8:34, it really shows us how to win. Now I'm going to tie this into it. I wasn't at first, but I'm going to tie this in. In Daniel chapter 4, listen to how a kingdom was taken down. Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom was taken down. This is spiritual warfare right here. Nebuchadnezzar, let's see. He saw, let me look here. It said, and starting in verse 4, he says, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in my house and flourishing in my palace. I saw a dream which made me afraid, and the thoughts upon my bed and the visions of my head troubled me. Therefore made I decree to bring in all the wise men of Babylon before me, that they might make known unto me the interpretation of the dream, all the wise men. Then came in the magicians, the astrologers, Harry Potter, and so on, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. I added Harry Potter in there, that's not in there. And I told the dream before them, but they did not make known unto me the interpretation. The only thing that you can look to is Jesus. When you sit and wait and listen to him, you can actually hear. The Holy Spirit will show you, and you'll be able to hear what God is saying, and you'll be able to see what God sees. Okay? And then Nebuchadnezzar is saying, he told the dream and the visions of his head. And then Daniel came in and actually interpreted it. The man of God came in and interpreted. Why? How could he interpret that dream? Because Daniel had that relationship that he spent time with God. He didn't spend the time looking at the stars and seeing what the stars would say. He would listen to what God would say. Now, here's what this dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. It concerned his kingdom. And so it says, thus were the visions of my head in my bed, and I saw and behold a tree in the midst of the earth, and the height thereof was great. The tree grew and was strong, and the height thereof reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to the end of all the earth. The leaves were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and it was meat for all the beasts of the field, had shadow under it, and the fowls of the heaven dwelt in the boughs thereof, and all the flesh was fed of it. Now he's showing what is going to happen here to his kingdom. And in Daniel 4:14 it says, he cried aloud and said, thus hew the tree and cut off his branches, shake off his leaves and scatter his fruit. Let the beasts get away from under it and the fowls from his branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump of his roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass in the tender grass. So Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom represented that tree, and it was being cut down. So his kingdom was being cut down. Now listen to hear what it says in verse 17. This matter, well, what matter? The matter of Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom being brought down it says here in verse 17, is by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men and gives it to whomsoever he will, and set it up over it the basis of men. So these watchers and these holy ones made the demand and the decree because Nebuchadnezzar said he saw him come down from heaven. They heard from God, and they spoke what they heard, and they decreed what they saw. Okay? They saw what God was going to do to Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, and they heard what God was going to do to Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, and they repeated it back here on this earth. He said he saw him come down from heaven. They came down here, and they did it, and they brought down a kingdom. Same way for us. It says, it says in Genesis 22:17 and 18, that will be a blessing to all nations, will possess the gate of the enemy. It's not the enemy possessing the gate and doing what he wants to do. It's about the ecclesia rising up, spending that time with God, hearing what he is saying and seeing what he's doing in order to bring down these unrighteous, ungodly kingdoms, hungering and thirsting. We are to hunger and thirst after righteousness to see God's plans and purposes. And this is spiritual warfare. I call this spiritual warfare 101, but it's just simply listening and hearing what God is saying, repeating what you hear, and looking to see what God is doing so you have an understanding. This is God's will and this is what he wants. I hope that's been a blessing to you. I know that works because I've seen it work in my life personally. And thank God that he gives us a solution to overcome this darkness here in this earth.